Okay, we're connected. I'm going to start about 30 seconds when the clock hits 6. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Okay, welcome everyone. So today I'm going to talk about the aggregate of Vedana, which is feeling, and it's compared by the Buddha to soap bubbles. So hence the thumbnail. A soap bubble is very ephemeral. It's very insubstantial, but they can actually get to be a fair size, and they can be very pretty and attractive. It's the same with our feelings. They don't really amount to anything. It's just a mental reflex. You should clarify the meaning of Vedana. The translation of feeling is perhaps somewhat misleading because we tend to use the word feelings in English almost as a synonym for emotions, and that's actually a more complex mental category than Vedana. Vedana is more like the rudimentary basis of emotion. It's at its simplest level. Vedana is just the mind liking or disliking or being neutral when confronted with an object. So we classify feeling as being sukha, pleasant, dukkha, unpleasant, or adukkama sukham, neither pleasant or unpleasant, neutral. And of course, it's on a spectrum. You can have, for example, a very mildly unpleasant feeling, mild irritation, or you can have agonizing pain. And the same with a pleasant feeling, can be anywhere from a slight feeling of well-being or happiness to ecstatic joy. That's all on a spectrum, but it still can be analyzed just into those three broad categories. We can also analyze feelings in terms of the source. There are purely mental feelings, and there are feelings that are rooted in the first instance on bodily sensation, the sense of touch. So pain and pleasure felt in the body or entirely within the mind. It's a principle found in Abhidhamma that of the 6 sense spaces, it's only those two, the tactile sense or the sense of touch, and the mind sense that realizes mental objects. Those are the only two that are able to experience feeling directly. With the other senses, sight, sound, taste, and the smell, we might say there are, for example, pleasant and unpleasant smells, but the Abhidhamma theory is that's not directly. You don't immediately experience a smell as pleasant or unpleasant, but then it's the mental reaction to it that generates the feeling. And I think there is some practical sense to this idea, particularly, let's say, with a sense of sight. We say, there's a common saying in English, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You can see people have different tastes in things like art. Something people see something as beautiful, and another person might see it as boring or ugly. And the same with tastes. We have many different flavors that different people enjoy or dislike. And there's such a thing as an acquired taste. You may not like a certain flavor until you get used to it, then you start to relish it and enjoy it. So this indicates that those senses don't directly produce the feeling. It's a mental processing subsequent to the sense sensation that yields the feeling. But a poke in the eye with a sharp stick immediately generates painful feeling. It doesn't. There's no kind of judgment. There's no no necessity to process it further. Vedana comes up in the cycle of dependent origination, and it's a critical link in the 12 nidanas. The part of the sequence that applies is because of sense contact, there arises feeling, and because of feeling, there arises craving, tanha. And this is critical for practice to understand this and how this works. Vedana is the last resultant factor, meaning that you don't have control over your feelings. It's not something you choose or will. It's a result of the sense impression, which itself is ultimately the result of past karma. And the feeling happens automatically. It's not chosen by the person. But then what you do with it is a matter of choice. There is volition involved in the next step. So the next step, the step to craving, is the first beginning of the next phase of the cycle, which is volitional, is karma making. Now, it takes some degree of will or volition to not automatically fall into craving. For a pleasant sensation, this produces the directly craving for sense pleasure. And for a unpleasant feeling, it produces aversion. And for a neutral feeling, it produces dullness or boredom. And this is why mindfulness directed to the feelings, the second satipatthana, Vedanusati, is a very important part of practice, to see and note your feelings, so that you don't automatically just fall into the next phase of dependent origination and go around the wheel again. This is said to be the link in which you can break the cycle if you're aware of your feelings. And this includes the neutral feelings. I've thought that it's very probable, if it were possible, throughout the course of an ordinary day, for most people, most of the time, if you were able to keep a running score of every feeling that arose, the neutral feeling would probably be the dominant, would come out the majority of mind moments. Just boring old neutral feeling. That's not pleasant, not unpleasant. And if one is not aware of that, that leads to dullness and the sensation of boredom. It's a result of a kind of an aversion to equanimous feeling, neutral feeling. And of course, a neutral feeling at its simplest level, it's just neither pleasant nor painful, but it can be elevated to the status of upeka, which is peacefulness, neutrality, a peaceful neutrality. Which is considered to be spiritually more refined than joy or bliss. It's associated with fourth jhana, whereas bliss is associated with third jhana. So feeling is something that we can't really get away from. We're going to experience pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. And it's considered resultant, meaning we don't have control of it. And what we do with it is critical. In terms of ethical factors making karma, there's some interesting applications of the three feelings to volitional acts. In that joy or happy feeling, pleasant Vedana, Sukha Vedana, acts as a karma intensifier, meaning if you perform a volitional act, either skillful or unskillful, it's more potent if it's done joyfully. So that is, if you say on the positive side, if you perform an act of kindness or generosity, and you do it with joy in your heart, you're happy to do it, then it's more karmically potent than if you do it reluctantly or neutrally. But also on the negative side, if you perform an act of cruelty or harming of others, and you relish it, and it gives you joy, then it's worse. It's a stronger negative karma than if you just do it cold. Yeah. It's also an important point from Abhidhamma categories that unpleasant feeling, unpleasant mental feeling, domanassa, is never associated with skillful mind states. So it's never spiritually useful or positive to feel sad or down. It's not. It's never associated with a spiritually helpful state. Spiritually helpful sankharas do not occur in conjunction with domanassa. This is a profound idea, but it's one you have to be somewhat careful about how you apply it. That you don't use it to beat up on yourself. It's natural you're going to feel sadness or grief when bad things happen, but just to realize there's no real spiritual benefit to that. And remember that the feelings themselves are not under your control. They're karmically generated. But that said, we can arrange the circumstances of our mind stream and our life, our actions, that we will incline more and more towards pleasant feeling than to unpleasant feeling. There's no benefit in cultivating unpleasant feeling. As I say, we don't have direct control over our feeling, but we do have an indirect influence on it. And you can choose to do things that will elevate the spirit, or you can do things that make you miserable. And there's no benefit in making yourself miserable. This is, this may seem even kind of obvious, but there have been spiritual and religious traditions that perform acts of self-mortification, of punishing one's body to achieve some kind of higher state. The Buddha himself, that when he was an unenlightened bodhisattva, he spent 6 years experimenting with different spiritual practices, and he did these things like extreme fasting and so on, and holding difficult postures. And he ended up rejecting it as not being fruitful. And just as with the other aggregates, it is possible for us to identify wrongly a self around Vedana. People can identify strongly with their feelings, you know, and feel that that's what the essence of their being is that, I feel, therefore I am. This is the kind of the emotional type person would can feel that intuitively, that they feel that their emotional life is the real deal. So it's important to recognize the insubstantiality, the soap bubble like nature of the feelings. They come and go. They're not, and there's no substance to them. They're not actually intrinsically important. They're insubstantial, and they never can fully satisfy. And they are impermanent. They're very transient, and they're conditioned. They arise according to causes and conditions, and not otherwise. So there's no sense in relying on them or taking them too seriously, making too big a deal out of them. And it's a very important part of practice, is being able to see the emptiness of all our mental states, the sankharas, the formations, and also the perceptions and feelings, to see them as empty and conditioned and not substantial, without any essence. So I think that's about all I have to say about feelings for the formal part of the talk. And now I'll look at the chat for questions. Let's see if there's any up there already. Somebody's asking which conveys more respect, Bhante or Ajahn. It's not. I don't think it's a really. It really matters. Bhante is Pali, and is suitable for all monks. You're always safe to call a monk Bhante. Ajahn is Thai only, so only Thai ordained monks would use Ajahn, and the usage varies in different lineages. In our lineage, we generally reserve the title Ajahn for a monk who's been ordained for at least 10 years. Ajahn is a Thai word from the Pali Acharya. It means teacher. Okay. I guess it's from Canmore, so I guess it's Sangamita. She's asking, what about a painful sound, or is that considered physical? Yeah. Well, the pain in a loud or sharp sound is actually the sense of touch. It's tactile. It's disturbing the ear. If it's so loud that it hurts, then it's a tactile, painful sensation. So it's directly painful. But if it's just an unpleasant sound, like a lot of people find, for example, scratching on a chalkboard, it's not painful, but it's unpleasant. It kind of gives you the creeps. That would just be a mental reaction to that unpleasantness. I'm going to have to expand the type. I have a hard time reading this tiny little type. In the video I was watching, YouTube's auto-generated closing caption transcribed the 5 aggregates of Klingon. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I've seen some funny things with when I ever write anything, I have to turn the autocorrect off, because I use a lot of Pali words, and they always try to change it to some weird English Say, that's a good one. 5 aggregates of Klingon. Okay. Um, should we see Vedana as 4 elements? No, no, that's not correct, because the 4 elements relate to the Rupa Kanda, the physical body or matter more generally, and Vedana is mental, so the 4 elements don't apply. Is it possible there are other Samasam Buddhas in other world systems? Yes, it's quite possible. Um, according to the theory in the commentaries, there couldn't be another Buddha within 10,000 world systems, but outside of that, there could be. But I know I would take that with a grain of salt. But there's no reason why there can't be other Buddhas in other world systems. Samyuddha 36:6, the Dart says, noble disciples experience only bodily feeling, but can Patujanas also access this experience from time to time, even if briefly when practicing contemplation? Yeah, I think the meaning of that statement is that the enlightened person feels the bodily sensation, but doesn't have the mental reaction. So, like the Buddha was had there's incident, for example, when he was injured, when Devadatta tried to kill him, and he threw a rock down the hill at him, but it hit him a shard hit him in the foot, and cut his foot. And it said he experienced physical pain, but he did not experience unpleasant sensation. Is hunger a Vedana? Well, hunger would be a tactile sensation, and that could be classified as painful. So, yeah, I would say it's a physical unpleasant sensation. Could a Pacheka Buddha on his last rebirth be born to a poor family? I have not seen any text that puts any prerequisites onto the birth of a Pacheka Buddha. Samasam Buddha is said can only be born into the upper castes, either a Brahmin or a Kshatriya. But I don't know about a Pacheka Buddha. It's not specified. The notion of aggregate points to interdependence. Can it be said that if one is absent, the others will also be? Could we think of sentient beings with less than 5 aggregates? Yeah, actually, there is a case in the Buddhist cosmology of 4 aggregate beings. The beings in the formless realm have only the 4 mental aggregates. They have no bodies, so they're mind only. Whether it's possible to separate the 4 mental aggregates is doubtful. I think in any embodied being or even a disembodied formless being, the 4 mental aggregates are always present. Plants are considered to have life faculty but not consciousness. So without the consciousness, they also would not have the other aggregates. Is consciousness something local in body, or consciousness in another dimension can overlap with other consciousnesses? Well, that question itself sort of misses the point that consciousness is non-physical. So if it's non-physical, it's essentially also non-local, although we experience it as local in our own being, in our body. But there is a psychic power of knowing others' minds, which was used by the Buddha on many occasions, and also by some of the arhats, and even by some of the advanced practitioners in later times. And this my understanding of how that would work is that it taps into the non-physical nature of mind, that is essentially is non-local. And it's only experienced as local because of our embodied nature and our limited development and perception. Is there any Vedana after fourth jhana other than Opeka, especially in Akinchayatana? No, from fourth jhana and in the four formless jhanas, which Akinchayatana is the realm of or the jhana of nothingness. In those jhanas, there's no Vedana other than Opeka. That's it. There's no pleasant sensation or unpleasant sensation. Is compassion some sort of sukha? Sukha would be possibly present together with compassion. It's not in itself compassion. Compassion would classify as a sankhara, as a mental formation. And it could be associated either with pleasant feeling or probably more often with neutral feeling. Is it possible to attain any of the states of awakening, like stream winner, etc., without having practiced jhana? That's a little bit complicated to answer. In theory, no, it's not. The theory is that jhana must always precede Maggapala. However, the Buddha did mention in one or two places, without elaborating on it, he did mention one of the ways of attaining enlightenment was what he called the bare uh, insight path, which seems to preclude jhana. And we do have in modern times traditions in Burma that could be classified as bare insight practice, or very close to it. They do little or no jhana work before entering into serious vipassana. The Mahasi Sayadaw tradition, of which I am very familiar, that they could be classified in this camp. And Mahasi himself, in his writings, he was very scholarly and immersed in Abhidhamma theory. And his explanation was that prior to the attainment of enlightenment, for a Vipassana practitioner who's not previously developed jhana, there will spontaneously occur at least one mind moment of jhana before enlightenment. But the general advice of the Buddha was to develop jhanas and then to go on to investigation after that. Do I carry my karma from birth to birth and go on piling up that karma? You do until the karma is extinguished, meaning it reaches fruition. You have a karma for something, and then something happens, and then that karma is gone. It's used up. And also, when one attains to a stage of enlightenment, then that attenuates outstanding karma. But that's the only way that karma is really just erased, is attaining states of enlightenment. I found the concept of stabbing oneself with the second arrow a great help in not fueling negative feelings. Yeah, that's good. That's good. You brought up that simile. It's like if a man is shot with an arrow, that's physical pain sensation. But then if you pick up another arrow and stab yourself again, that's the mental suffering, which is entirely unnecessary. I found a practical way of dealing with physical pain is often to recognize it as not me, not mine. So you have a sore foot. You stepped on something sharp, and you have a sore foot. Instead of regarding it as, oh, my foot hurts, you regard it as there is painful sensation. Is chitta formless, chittasika form? They're both formless in that they're not material. They're not of rupa kanda. They're of immaterial. Anything. The four mental aggregates are immaterial. They have nothing to do with matter. So they don't have weight, color, location, size, any of those physical attributes. The feelings arise from a particular location in the body. I get feelings in the belly that create anxiety and fear. Um, I don't think they technically arise in the body. That kind of unless it's a painful sensation caused by injury or illness. But if it's like an emotional state, I don't think it arises in the body. But you're quite accurate to observe that there is a physical corollary. There is an associated physical sensation that goes along with a lot of emotional states. And anxiety is a classic one that you feel it in the belly. You feel it rumbling in the belly when you're anxious. Um, but that's not the origin of the feeling. It's more like the sensation. The feeling is the origin of the sensation. The body reacts. The body and mind interreact all the time. And the body reacts to the feeling. Okay. If the Buddha's goal is to get out of samsara, did the Buddha mention in any sutta that you lay people, I mean not monks, should not have children or just have one child? No, he did not. He did not say that. For lay people, um, uh, to have children or not is a personal choice. It's not like it's neither extreme with the Buddhist teaching. Like some religions have the injunction, go forth and multiply. This is some words from Christian Bible. And other religions, like the Cathars, the ascetic uh, principle, one should never have children, that it's wrong to bring beings into the suffering world. The Buddha didn't say it one way or the other. Um, uh, so it's seen. I think it's seen as just a natural course of life. That if one has not taken ordination, one has not taken a commitment to celibacy, it's a natural course of life. You have relationships and marriage and children, and it's not seen as either highly. It's not seen as like something highly advocated and wonderful, or as something wrong that should be avoided. It's just natural. In your opinion, where should we aim to end the break of dependent origination? Contact, pasa, feeling, Vedana, craving, tanha. I think we get to clinging, upadana gets much harder. Yeah, that's exactly correct. Once the weak point, and Buddhadasa has written about this and quite eloquently. It's one of his main teachings. Um, the the weak point is between feeling and craving, because feeling is considered resultant. You can't do anything about it, and but craving is the first volitional moment. And if you allow your feeling to overwhelm the mind and you fall into craving, then the craving naturally matures into upadana, clinging, and it is much harder to break once it gets past that point. So the weak point that the point where you can stop it is to not let craving arise from feeling. Once you've gone that far, it becomes excessively harder to break, and you're going to go through the cycle again. And, you'll, you'll cling to the object, and the object will disappoint you. As like the small cycle of dependent origination. The big cycle is like over lifetimes, but the same process happens very quickly, moment by moment. So you cling to an object, and then the object disappoints you and breaks up and falls away, that's a little death. And then you start again, and you go through the same thing again and again and again. But the point where you can stop it is not letting craving arise. I have made the choice to be a closet Buddhist because the people I associate with believe I'm trying to achieve a supernatural state. Is this way of thinking creating negative karma? No, it's whatever you're comfortable with. You're not. It's your own practice. You don't. You're not required to advertise it. Uh, if if people, even for the monks, we're actually not. It's one of our rules. We're not allowed to teach unless we're asked to teach. Um, so we couldn't like go stand on a. We'd be breaking the rules if we stood on the street corner on the soapbox and started preaching about Buddhism. Um, but so if I give a Dhamma talk here once a week, people come to listen to it. We do a formal request for the talk, but that's not even really necessary. The idea is that if they're coming, we can assume they came to hear a Dhamma talk. Same with this YouTube channel. You tune in because you want to hear the Dhamma. It would be a Vinny offense for me to spam spam all your emails with a mass mailing preaching the Dhamma. That would not be correct. So it's okay for you if you don't feel comfortable about publicly talking about the Dhamma to your friends and relatives, and you don't have to. But if they're interested and you feel like explaining, that's also good. Thus, the amplifying effect of joyousness comes from the fact that the action is more lasting in the mind that way. That could be part of it. I think it's just the intensity of the mental state, because karma always originates in the mind, even when it's a bodily action. It has to originate in a mental impulse first, and it's more intense if it's joyful. Suppose someone gets married and has children. Is this considered a person considered a failure in Buddhism because he gave in to failings of craving and delusion, or can't he still make progress? No, he can still make progress. It's not a failure. That's his path in this lifetime. Uh, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As the next person points out, the Buddha himself was married and had a son. Inclining towards cultivating pleasantness so as to start moving away from feelings of sadness. And we must start with right understanding. Yes. Yeah, correct. With right view. Like you don't do foolish, harmful things to try and make yourself happy. Like taking narcotics or something. If you have right view and you live well, just living well, following the Dhamma, keeping the precepts should bring you peace and joy. Is it possible to attain liberation by psychedelics? No, I don't think it actually is. I think there is some experiences that can be had with psychedelics, but not the breakthrough, not liberation. One of my teachers put it this way. He said that with hallucinogen psychedelics, you can peek your head above the clouds and see, oh yeah, there is a pure land, but you never get your boots up there. Is it possible that schizophrenics are seeing Petas, Devas, Brahmas, or other realms? Um, I wouldn't rule it out that they are actually, or that they're possibly their perception is open to other realms. But from my experience with schizophrenic people, they're generally pretty unhappy and mixed up. So I would think that it's more likely this kind of demonic beings that are attacking them. How do we get rid of dullness while meditating? Walking meditation. is good. Don't think you need to sit down to meditate. If you're falling asleep all the time and feeling dull, walking can be very helpful. When you are sitting, pay attention to the posture. Make sure you're sitting straight. Also, you might try varying the meditation, doing some meditations that brighten and expand the mind. You know, they give a talk recently on Devanusati. It could also the Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, and so on. Those kind of meditations can expand and brighten the mind. Then you can even do that for a while, then go back to samatha or vipassana, and you may find it improved. Do you find practicing becomes easier with old age? Well, in some respects, the body is certainly not as nimble or cooperative, but uh, the passions tend to die down, and there's also an accumulation of time, just of experience. If one is able to practice walking meditation, would one say it's very important practice to discipline self one with? Yes, in Thailand they do a lot of walking meditation. It's a major part of the practice. I know not all traditions do that, but um, it's actually, I think, a very useful, helpful meditation. Is it difficult for being in a rupa realm to attain nibbana since they are so subtle and close, especially in neither perception or non-perception? Yeah, it's the theory is that no one attains to any state of liberation in an arupa realm. There are some beings in those realms that are sotapannas, but they attained it in the human or deva realm, and then were reborn in arupa realm. When they're in the arupa realm, they can't make any further attainments, and that is because it's so subtle that dukkha is not really evident. Why is equanimity better than happiness? I always wondered this. Um, it's better in the sense that it's more peaceful, so the mind is more clear, uh, and we see that both in the samatha path and in the vipassana path. In the samatha path, the fourth jhana is marked by equanimity, and in the vipassana path, um, the critical late stage is equanimity about formations, when the mind is in perfect equanimity. It's an extremely peaceful level, and there's no um, agitation. Which joy and happiness is also can be kind of agitating. Like it's especially in the form of piti. It's kind of exciting, so it's not peaceful. If one has an injury, is it okay to get massage therapy? Oh, certainly, yeah. Why not? No benefit in you just suffering. If you can do something about it. Can a monk exercise? Yes, certainly. What degree of self care is encouraged? Uh, it's certainly good to take care of the body, as you not let yourself fall apart and keep your body healthy. It can um, only become sort of negative if you become obsessive. But to maintain a healthy frame and immune system and a body is good. How to understand Buddhist psychology about managing sadness compared to Western modern psychology? I think the key difference is that uh, and it's difficult to talk about Western psychology as a broad brush because there's so many different schools, and everybody different. There are many different approaches, but for some of them at least, they sort of see sadness as having some intrinsic value, as grief as healing or something. But that's not the Buddhist idea. It doesn't see any any particular benefit in sadness, other than when sadness arises, one should be conscious of it and not identify with it. It's just another state to be observed. Okay, so I think I'll take my leave now, and we'll see you again the same time next week. And uh, high praise to Mustafa, who's up at 2 a.m. to listen to these talks. Okay, and I'll sign out now.